Hello and welcome to this video brought to you by Pierce Mayfield. Improving the performance of any business is hard. Doing change even harder. So improving the performance of change is always going to be, it's always going to be one heck of a challenge. Today we want to discuss what it means to have a capability for change and to explore ways how to improve it. Joining me to discuss change capability, I'm delighted to have with me in the studio Robert Cole. Robert is Managing Director of the Centre for Change Management. Robert's an experienced coach, consultant and trainer in organisational change, and he works extensively with business and with government. And Robert's a valued and long-term associate of Pierce Mayfield, of course. Robert, welcome again and thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Adrian. It's really good to be here.
Can we start by setting the scene, please? I know that you've worked on management capability models for a long time, 20 odd years or something. You must have been very young when you started. Really.
Oh, thank you.
So, okay, how did you end up focusing specifically on change capability?
Oh, well, that's right, Adrian. I started with the early software engineering capability models when I worked for a large IT company. Then I later developed a capability model for innovation to try and help me explain how innovation works inside organisations. Right. So when I moved into change management and consultancy, it seemed an obvious development to develop a capability model for change to help me and my clients understand how change works inside organisations.
Okay, so it started off from curiosity and needing to have that understanding, really.
Yes. It really helps to understand what's going on in an organisation.
Yeah, if you can't start off by identifying, you can't do any fixes.
Yeah.
I had a very quick look at your model, and I see that you set out as an objective. Let me just quote this to you. Yes, quote, delivering successful change, unquote. Now, this is interesting because there are definitions there, aren't there, of success and of change, and these intrigued me. Can you explain these for us?
Yes, the definitions, I hope, are quite practical and testable, but I also want to provide some mechanisms inside them that provide a focus for action. So we define success in change as delivering the benefits described in the business case, within the costs in the business case, and in the timescales in the business case. This makes it quite clear that a good business case is at the heart of good change. Right. And we define change as only occurring in an organisation when some people have changed the way they behave. And that means change is a people-focused activity.
Okay, so let me just make sure I've got this right then. You are saying that behavioural change is at the heart of organisational change?
Absolutely. Okay. And also it's the heart of a change capability model. If we want to improve the way an organisation does change, then it means changing the way people behave when they do change. Yeah. And so what we need in order to improve the way people do change is a traditional management tool that tells us about the way we do change now, what we need to do better, and how are we going to do it better. And that's what a capability model is for.
Okay, you talked just then about a management tool. So what about some basic management skills which are used in change that can support the capability to do change? Can you share a few of these with us?
Yes, I think there are 4 key management skills for change. They're built into the change capability model. And these 4 key skill areas are, first of all, benefits management, making sure you've identified the benefits and you really will get them, and then that you do get them. Risk management. Usually when you're planning a change, all the activities in the future. And so risk management is a mechanism for looking into the future and trying to understand what's the risks associated with doing this particular activity. Then critically, stakeholder engagement. One of the most common reasons for failure is poor stakeholder engagement. So getting this right is essential. And then finally, people management. Those soft skills of understanding how people change their behaviours. Why do they resist changing their behaviours? What journey do people go on in changing those behaviours? Those are the 4 key areas: benefits, risk, stakeholder, and people management.
Okay, well, that's very interesting because you use the title management there 3 times: benefits, risk, people. But when you talk stakeholders, you talk engagement, because one doesn't manage a stakeholder; you have to engage with them. If the only way you can get them on side is by bullying them and managing them down, then that's just not the way it's done.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, interesting.
Yes.
Can I just rewind the tape for a second? You talked about the capability model, and I think maybe now would be a good time for you to explain to us just what the capability model is, or a capability model is, and what the change capability model in particular looks like.
Okay, so if we go back to the previous point I made about those 4 management areas that are essential for change, they can be used at one end of a spectrum. You can use them mechanically and ineffectively, which actually makes them look quite bureaucratic. But at the other end of the spectrum, they get used sensibly as part of a culture of management effectiveness. So if we think about that range of usage behaviors, that then enables us to think about, well, what's going on in your organization? Are you doing something bureaucratically, or are you using that as an effective skill in a sensible way?
Okay. Yeah.
So that enables us to think about levels of capability. So a capability model is made up of a matrix of levels of capability and the way you use different competence areas, similar to the 4 that we've just mentioned. All capability models actually now use 5 levels of competence. So they start at level 1, which is no competence, and go up to level 5, which is best competence. Okay.
Right.
So our change capability model uses these levels as follows, and I'll explain them quite briefly. So level 1 is chaotic. Essentially, there's no overt change management, and what there is mostly a response to a significant failure. Most change fails according to our definition of success, and usually there's no business case.
Right.
And that sort of sounds like the pits, doesn't it?
Yeah, you bet.
So, and that's the default space.
Yeah.
Okay. Then level 2, going up a level, is what we call heroic. This is where isolated individuals and groups are doing change management. This means they increase their success rate because they're now thinking about how to do this.
Yeah.
But they're not getting any support from the organization, and especially poor support from senior managers. So there are pockets of good practice, although each pocket does things differently because each hero is doing their own things.
Yeah.
And you end up with an ad hoc business case because there's no standard in the organization.
Yes.
Then going up a level to level 3, this we call structured, because here the organization steps up to the plate and takes on a common method and language for doing change. So instead of pockets of stuff, everyone's doing the same thing.
Right.
The managers get trained in the new structures, but because everyone's practicing it, the quality of implementation varies. Mm-hmm. Although most change is beginning to become successful in the sense of you are getting the behavior changes in the business that we wanted, following through to the benefits, which is what we really need to obtain, is not so well implemented. And the business case is used to justify the investment, but isn't used afterwards to control or, in particular, to measure success, which we mentioned earlier on.
Yes.
Then going up another level to level 4, we call that managed, because here the whole process becomes measured, and that enables us to bring our performance into a consistency. And now our change starts becoming successful, and we're beginning to get significant benefits realization.
Right.
So we can say at that level, best practice is being implemented, and the business case is used to justify the investment, control delivery, and becomes a test for success. And because we're measuring the business, we'll know if we've achieved success or not.
Right.
And then finally, level 5, we call that reflective. This is where the change management in the organization is tailored to suit the environment, and learning is embedded in the way we do change management. So reflective thinking is used to improve the method and the skills that we use. And we could say here that best practice is actually being invented at level 5. And the business case then is under quality control, and it's aimed at improving decision making and delivery control.
Right.
Okay, so those are the 5 levels.
Okay.
And then we use 4 areas of skills and competence, which would bring in different aspects of those 4 management skill areas that we talked about earlier on. So the four areas which we focus on are knowledge and skills,
Yeah.
which is how the method is used, how the four management topics, benefits, risks, stakeholders, and soft skills, are used, and how they're developed and deployed inside the organization.
Yes.
So that includes things like training and education,
Yeah.
and practice and qualifications and so on.
Yes.
Then processes and roles, and this is about how the work is organized in terms of what processes you're going to use, who should be doing the work, and that's the area where you'll find job descriptions, quality criteria, and process descriptions.
Yep.
Then leadership and governance. This is about senior management commitment, middle and frontline leadership. And in change, the frontline managers are often the critical leaders
Yes.
in leading the behavior change.
Yes.
We talk about accountability and devolved responsibility for getting things done to the right standard. And it's also about the cultural support within which change is taking place.
Right. Right.
And then the fourth topic is managing change itself. So making sure that you're working on the key contributors to success, you're managing the main causes of failure that occurred in your organization in the past, you're balancing the work between change and business as usual, because they've both got different priorities.
Yes.
And obviously you don't want to damage business as usual too much during change.
Yes.
And you're doing performance measurement and generally thinking about how do you improve your method.
Right. Okay. You've given us an enormous amount of content. I can just see the detail. Don't worry if you didn't catch all of that. Robert's produced some excellent material to support everything that he said just then, and I'll tell you at the end how you can get hold of it. So don't worry about that. I can see that it's a very powerful model, but how exactly can managers and leaders use it to improve their performance and their organisation's performance in doing change?
Right. Well, that's critical. If we have a tool, we need to know how to use it. Exactly. Yeah. So the model is a matrix of levels and competence areas, and it enables us to build an assessment tool by placing in each cell of the matrix a description of the behaviours you would expect to see in an organisation operating at that level doing that area. So let's take an example. For instance, in the leadership and governance area at level 3, inside the model, we would write senior managers support the change throughout its life cycle as being accountable and provide appropriate leadership behaviour. So accountability is not always enforced because success isn't measured. Measurement is a level 4 attribute.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then we can devise a questionnaire seeking to identify whether such behaviour is taking place in the organisation.
All right.
So we could ask, do senior managers in your organisation, are they accountable for the success of change?
Okay.
Or we could say senior managers support change right through to the end to ensure success.
Right.
And those are two behaviours we would expect to see inside level 3 for that area.
Yes, I understand that.
But then we'd say senior managers are not often held to account for failures in a change,
Right.
which is another negative behaviour.
Yes.
Because there's no measurement. So although managers claim they're accountable, when it actually comes to holding them to account, they wriggle out.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yes,
So a behaviour that a lot of people would recognise.
I can hear bells ringing. Okay, can I just challenge you then on a very practical level? What sorts of things would an organisation need to actually do to improve? I mean, it can't be that hard, can it? Or can it?
Well, a good way to think about improvement would be to have a look at the significant differences between each level in the model and how those differences could be implemented and moved across. Okay. So if we have a look at level 1, you don't have to do anything to get to level 1. It's the default position.
Yeah.
And in practice, there are not many organisations working completely at this level. But often some of the change competence areas do fall at that level, whereas most of the others would probably be at level 2. But to get to level 2, you need pockets of proactive change management. And this is usually a localised initiative. So a senior manager decides to bring in some people with change experience to improve the competence, or a middle manager goes out to get some education on change in their own initiative. So they're generating small areas of competence.
Right.
And these are the people who become the heroes. But and if they don't get support, then they will leave.
If the heroes don't get support.
If the heroes don't
this
get
is a role for consultancy and coaching and mentoring.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes. And so once you get into level 2, senior managers have got to start swinging in behind
Yes.
this stuff and broadening the competence.
Yes.
Otherwise, the heroes will just disappear.
Yes.
They'll find easier places to go and work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So senior management awareness and growing commitment. And that's what takes us to level 3. So to get to level 3, the problem needs senior management action. The senior managers have to impose an organization-wide method and provide the resources to get it implemented. But you can see that's quite hard, because an organization at level 2, which is trying to get at level 3, is used to under-resourcing its change.
Yes.
Yeah.
Catch-22.
Catch-22.
Yeah.
So they've actually got to stump up the resources. They've got to put investment into doing this.
Yeah.
And in today's climate, that's not a trivial thing to do. So that's quite hard. Okay. And actually moving from level 2 to level 3 can often take a couple of years in an organization. So the managers have got to stick with it. You know, you can't sort of say, well, after 6 months, is this working? And if it doesn't appear to be working, try something else.
Yes.
Well, in fact, there isn't anything else.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Then when you go to level 4, the key at level 4 is measurement. Okay. And you'll only get there if the rest of the management activity in the organization is also using measurement for consistent performance. So it's a cultural shift across the whole organization.
Yes.
And using effective measurement in management is a significant investment,
Yeah.
as well as a cultural change. Then finally, the difference at level 5 is the use of regular reflection on everything a manager does to seek improvement.
Yes.
This search for improvement also requires knowledge management and a learning culture, which means one in which risk-taking and failure is acceptable because of what can be learned from it.
Yeah.
So that's another significant cultural shift.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that only a handful of organizations are actually working at this level.
Yeah. That's
So I think the answer is improving the way an organization does change is hard. The capability model will provide a route map for improvement, but only a committed organization will complete the route and reap the rewards.
yes. So it's commitment, cultural shift, behavioural changes, and as you mentioned just then, it's a topic for another day. Fail fast, fail cheap.
Yes.
But failure is not life-threatening as long as you can fail it, fail
Yes.
fast and fail cheap.
Yeah.
And encourage people within boundaries to take risks.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Look, that sounds like a great place to leave it. So thank you, Robert. Another fascinating and insightful look at change. It's a big subject, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Now, I mentioned earlier you've produced some material to support some of the things that you've said today. Can we make that, or can you make that available to viewers?
Yes, they'll be available. There's a series of pictures and summarising the various levels and content.
That's great, thanks. And I'll give you, tell you in a moment how you can access this material. So let me try and briefly summarise. I hear you saying that whether or not we find it comfortable, we all operate in an environment of change, and whether or not change leader appears in our job descriptions, or maybe is even in our DNA to begin with, we are all responsible. We all have a key role in developing and leading and participating in and sustaining organisational change.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, okay. There are tools to help us on that journey, but the culture and behavioural shift is a prerequisite.
Yes.
Okay. Would you go so far as to say that any organisation which does commit itself to doing change well, to doing lasting, sustainable change well, will ultimately have a distinct commercial competitive edge?
It definitely will. And experience with organisations that have moved up their change competency levels, they are doing more change, they are more successful, and generally the organisations are much better places to work in.
So change can be good despite our resistance to it.
Change is always good.
Robert, that's a great place to leave it. A very optimistic tailpiece. Again, my grateful thanks to you for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Adrian.
If you'd like to get hold of a copy of the material that Robert mentioned just then please do drop me a line at adrian.borman@piercemayfield.com. And if you'd like to follow up on anything that you've seen and heard today, or to find out what else Pierce Mayfield can do to support you or your organisation in delivering successful change, then we'd be delighted to hear from you. You can contact us at info@piercemayfield.com. You can visit our website at allthews.piercemayfield.com, or you can give us a ring on the good old-fashioned telephone, which is 01235 227 252. Thank you for listening.